Welcome back to another episode of Re-Correlated Podcast. We have today myself and August. Hollis is out traveling for work, which lame excuse because so was I. Anyway, we also have a very special guest, one of my people on my team, my new team, Ellie Ashton. He is here today. And if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself a little bit.
Hey guys, so I'm working here with Nathalie. We're just leaning into the GRC side of things, and former Division I college athlete, and I'm in school currently for psychology. In the master's program, and then projected rolling into the doctorate shortly after that. And psychology is my thing. I'm a writer as well, so that's my background.
Which is a great background to have for today's conversation, since we are talking about the psychology of leadership. So I think there's a lot of different ways we could take this conversation. So we're going to see how it goes. We're not going off of notes for once. We're done with that. I think my conversation for my part is a lot more natural when I don't record like pre-planned and don't pre-plan as much. So what do you think is a great psychological trait of a leader, Ellie?
Resiliency.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like I personally think like pivoting is a really good key trait, which is very similar to resiliency, being able to, keep going through regardless of like what has faltered and just finding a new way to continue on to the goal and to the end game. What about you, August? What trait do you find is a very good, a strong psychological trait for a leader?
Humility. I think that a lot of leaders lack the ability to admit when they've made a mistake and own up to it. I haven't encountered that too much in cybersecurity, but I've been lucky enough to have good leaders so far. But go ahead. I forgot.
No, go ahead.
Anyways, nope.
Okay.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
I think humility is also a very, very strong trait to have as well, because you get to make or break your team's lives. You can either make them miserable or you can make their lives easier. And it all depends on you as a leader, like what your leadership style is. And really, like, if you make a mistake and you own it, then the next time when somebody on your team makes a mistake, they're going to own it. And it's not just going to be the blame game that gets played a lot out there. And Dwayne Parrish has come in with a comment saying the ability to adjust out of the ordinary situations. And I like that, because that's very much like pivoting in from one thing to the next thing.
Great. It's adaptability and flow state, and that is huge for leadership, right? That rolls into the accountability side of things, because if you can have a large capacity for truth, or a large capacity to be accountable and be responsible for those actions, like you said, everyone under you is going to do the same thing, or they'll start to follow suit.
Yeah.
Right, because you're setting the example.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, as a leader, you are the standard. So if you don't like the way your team is, or you don't like something that's happening, you've set that standard of this is where we're at and this is what I expect of you. So if you have a problem with how your team is running, maybe you should look at yourself first. Just a little thought, like introspection is one of the things that I think is very much a needed trait of a strong leader. Somebody who can look at themselves and be brutally honest. Like, I'm not talking about you're going to sugarcoat it and say, well, yeah, this could have gone better here, but I did my best. Like, no. You have to be like, what can I do better? How can I make the situation better in the future? Because if you're not going to self-reflect on what you've done right, what you've done wrong, and how you can be better, how do you plan to get better as a leader? How do you plan to become a stronger leader? And I think it's self-reflection and being brutally honest are the key things with that one. It's not just self-reflecting and then just like, saying, well, I did a good job. It's brutal honesty is needed. And a lot of leaders need that, I feel.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. That empathy is super important, because if you're able to look at yourself in the mirror, right, and then, okay, here's what we need, here's what we want to do, and then and the team that you're leading is then that mirror for you,
Yeah.
right? Because depending how truthful you are with you will show in that leadership, or any gaps that you have, it'll start to echo through and become very obvious really quickly.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, August, on self-reflection as a leader?
I mean, I think I agree with both of you that if you can't self-reflect and if you can't change how you lead individuals or as a team, that it's just going to fail, right? Because the situation changes day to day. People have bad days, people have good days, and the way you're treating them reflects upon you as a leader. And if you can't take feedback from your, whoever's appointed under you or whoever works for you, then that means they're not going to want to come to you when they're having problems and they're going to be unhappy. If you can't change the way you are, it's just pretty pointless to be a leader at that point, wouldn't you think?
Go ahead.
I can see that, yeah. And he actually hit a really good point here with being able to take feedback. You have to be able to go and give feedback too, in the way that others can go and receive it. And that's, for me, that ends up being the most important trait of a leader, which is empathy, leading through the point of empathy, being able to go and feel into the emotions of others, work with them from an emotional perspective, since humans are emotional kind of beings, and working with that and be able to deliver that information as well as receive it too. So we can go and take the adaptability or flow, take the humility, take the resiliency aspects of things, and be able to go and and bring that to life. And I think that is embodied through the leadership style of empathy.
Yeah, I feel like if you aren't empathetic to your people, because like everybody has off days. I have off days. We all have off days. Like even if you are super awesome at your job, you're still going to have off days. And as a leader, if you can't look and say, okay, well, maybe they're just having an off day, like getting to know your team, I think is super, super important as well. Like not just at work, but like outside of work, because I can tell when somebody is having an off day, just like at a glance. He's laughing because I've done it to him. But I can tell when somebody's having an off day, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's just a bad day. And maybe if it starts to turn into a bad week, we will kind of circle back and discuss like what we need to do to make it better. But if it's just a bad day, like you have to have that empathy to know that like your team, if your team trusts you and they really know you and they really trust you to lead them, they're going to do their best for you every day. And if there's one day that they're, not doing their best work for you, it's probably something else going on in their life that maybe they don't want to bring to your attention, or maybe they don't want to concern you with. But at the same time, there's something else going on that's far deeper than what you're actually seeing on the surface.
Right. You're spot on there. And then I like to be able to allow others to go take that space and create the distance, I suppose, so they could get back to their 100%, whatever that may be, because maybe they need 2-3 hours or that day to step back.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow they come back at 100%, like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
it really is. It's just a bad day. And then they're growing again. And there's nothing wrong with that.
So what are some great ways or good ways that you've seen leaders be able to create that space to give their team members like a way to step back and have that space, but yet, come back in a day or two and be ready to go?
The flexibility with deadlines, or the ability to not be so, I guess, particular on the hours worked that day, but more about focusing on the end goal and the product that's being completed and the quality of that product, I suppose, right? Because if it's not due until a Friday, or it's whatever isn't due until that a time frame, is it really that important if on Monday someone is burnt out at 3:00 and needs to head out an hour or two kind of early to show up and create a great day on Tuesday? Maybe at that point they're working 10 or 11 hours that day because they have the energy to go do it.
Yeah.
So a leader that is able to have that flexibility with that time is, I think, is very critical, or in the ability of anyone to be successful. I think. But that's me.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that flexibility, like give people grace, because people like I said, the people want to do great work for you. They want to go above and beyond, but you have to sometimes just give them the grace that they need to go do what they need to do to come back to be better. What about you, August? What are your thoughts?
I think it's about recognizing when you're when you're people who work for you or people who are under you, about telling them to take the time off that they need, right? But that's twofold. If you're having a bad day and your team can see that you're having a bad day and you're not taking time off, or you're not taking a break or taking your PTO, your team's not going to want to do it either, right? Because you're not. So they think they can plod through it, or plow through it, plow, one of those words.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would agree. I think when I used to run SOC, I had this whole mentality that I had to be there all the time. I had to take care of everything. Every alert that came in, like I had to be on top of it. And then I realized as I looked around that my team didn't want to take PTO. They didn't want to take their time off. And I would have to I yelled at Hollis, literally flat out, was like, bro, when are you taking your PTO, man? Like, when are you going to get on some PTO? Because like we've been working for like 6 months, you have PTO to use. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize that it was like, we didn't have to earn it first. We just like got an allotment of it. And I was like, yeah, go use your PTO, man. Like at least get something on the calendar. Cause like summer was winding down and I was like, you got to take some PTO, like at least a few days. You don't have to take like a whole week off, but take a few days at least. But at the same time, I had to look at myself as a leader and say, okay, if I'm not taking PTO, what message does that send to my team? And does that make them feel confident that they can go and take PTO and not work? I'm pretty sure I told you, because you kept checking in when you were on PTO, and I was like, stop looking at work when you're on PTO.
Well, especially in a SOC, alert fatigue is real. I mean, even if you have a leader that can just tell you to take away from the queue, depending on how many other people are in the queue or how many other people you're working, even an hour or two away when you're having a bad day is more than enough. And a good leader should have like Ellie said, the empathy to recognize that, or the intuition, say, hey, something's off about Hollis or something's off about Nathalie. They need, an hour away from the queue, or even just saying, hey, like, it's quiet, go home for the day, or go home for 4 hours. If we work remote, obviously go home is different, but it's hard. SOC and alert fatigue is hard. It's rough. Every day is rough.
And it is harder to give people that time off, like to be like, hey, go do whatever for an hour or two when you are in SOC, just because, like, especially depending on the type of SOC that you have. So like if you're in-house, it might be a little different, where you might have a little bit more coverage. If you are like at an MSSP or you're contracted to do SOC for another company, you might be the only person that's actually able to answer to those alerts. And that's a problem in executive leadership, if that is the case, because if they haven't allotted the right amount of people for you to be able to say, hey, this person needs a couple hours today, like I want to let them leave a little bit early, and have enough people backfilled to trained and ready to go to take over on alerts, then like you might be stuck not being able to let somebody go early just because who else is going to do it? Who else is going to look at, you can't just tell a client, like, we can't look at these alerts today. Like, sorry, you got hacked.
Yeah, but that's a great point. That leads into, I was just thinking of something as you were saying, that as a leader, being able to engage those around you and have that support as well, right? For have engagement, that the support becomes critical within the team. The more you support your team actually on the back end, the more engaged they are to go be interactive and take on these things head on, I suppose.
Yeah, and this is why you should never be the only person that knows how to do something, because you will never be able to take PTO in this world if you are the only person on your team that knows how to do something. I hate it. I hate whenever there's a task, and as soon as I'm the only person that knows how to do it, I'm like, we're training somebody else, because I don't want to be the only person that knows how to do it. Because like when I'm on PTO, who's supposed to be able to help out and do those tasks and still make sure that our client expectations and obligations are met? And at the same time, I want to make sure that it's delivered fully for the client's liking, right? Like I don't want it to just be half filtered on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. You have a focus on empowering those around you
Yeah.
to be able to go and make decisions and get these tasks and actions completed, whether you're there or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another topic that I want to bring up is we talked about feedback a little bit, but it's constructive feedback, like not just giving feedback, but actually being constructive about feedback. Because you can, as a leader, you can have somebody who's not doing something 100% right all the time, right? Like, or they're not doing something 100% the way you want it to be done. But have you told them how to improve it? And I think that's really another important quality, is like somebody who's like, okay, have you tried this, this, and this? And it doesn't have to be like, well, you're just wrong all the time, blah, blah, blah. Like, that is not the way to go about it. It's more so like, have you tried looking at it this way? Or have we tried looking at it this way? And like bringing in different perspectives, but also, you know, giving them ways to go about, avenues to approach to make themselves better, because you know, that's what you want for your team, is to make the best team that you can, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Having that solutions-based feedback is huge, right? It allows them to actually see where they need to go. You know, you're redirecting them and allowing them to truly see that path on their own for whatever is best within their skill set. It's like, here's a point you need to happen. Here's a few things you can do to make it occur. So now it's on you to take these steps and move forward.
I think our earlier topics about empathy and knowing how to navigate interpersonal relationships kind of ties into constructive feedback, because everyone takes feedback differently, right? That's where you're, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not eloquent. It's knowing how to deliver something without hurting somebody's feelings. And I can't think of the word right now. But for me, constructive feedback, I just want it, right? Like, just tell me where I'm fucking up. I don't want to hear, like, I don't want you to tiptoe around the subject. I don't want you to be nice about it. Just tell me, hey, this needs fixed. Let me know how it is in 2 weeks. Whereas someone that's more introverted or not a veteran or is more sensitive would need feedback saying, hey, like, maybe you're having a rough week, but there's something going on here. How can we fix this?
Well, and that's just the thing, is as a leader, you have to be able to read people, because not
Yeah.
everybody on your team is going to respond to the same. So like one person might really get their feelings hurt if you're like, this wasn't the greatest that it could be. And then, you know, another person might not get the message if you're not like, hey, do this, this, and this better. Like, so it's a lot about like reading people, and that's why I think it's super important to actually know your team at work and also outside of work to an extent. And I'm not saying like you have to be best pals outside of work and like all that. You have to go camping together or anything like that. But I am saying that like getting to know them outside of the four walls will help you read them better, because you understand like what makes them tick. Because each person on your team is going to have something different that makes them tick. And that's really important.
Exactly. Because I'm more of a direct feedback kind of person. I prefer the same way as August here, essentially, you know, just let me know straight up, and it'll make my life a lot easier. I'll address it, attack it from there. Like, okay,
It's so much easier than like 15 or 16 messages, like trying to get to the point. Just tell me what you need. We're all busy. It's fine. I'll be okay.
it is a lot easier. I know for me as a leader or as a person, I've been working on softening my approach with those scenarios. Right, I prefer direct feedback to me, regardless. But being able to work through the empathetic side of things and softening to like a maximum point of softening that I can reach or go to is it's a challenge, and it is extremely important to be able to reach the maximum amount of people within your team and or group. Sometimes that is a challenge and can be difficult, but it is extremely important from what I've seen.
It is an art. Softening your approach is an art.
Yeah,
it's a form of art.
Softening the rough edges, something I know in the past I've been averse to going and doing that, but I see the value in that now. So.
Coming from a background of athletics, it's probably much different than working in cybersecurity and trying to soften your edges. I feel the same way. I've had to dial back the personality that I have because I'm a very loud and direct person. But in cyber, that doesn't always translate very well, because most people in cyber are not like that.
Yeah, I get that. Loud and direct is how it was in sports for me. So realizing I can't just go and do that in the corporate world and the real world it was a challenge. I was like, oh, I can't communicate this way. No, I don't know what else to do.
Trying to tell someone to unfuck themselves in cybersecurity will not always go over well.
No, it won't. No.
I mean, it depends on who it is, right?
Yeah. Really, but that's anywhere. But cyber, there's so many people that are introverted and not social people. So it's harder for someone like, I know for you, Nathalie, you're introverted, whereas I'm extremely loud and very extroverted. Like I can talk to anybody about anything, but in cyber that doesn't go well. Not always. I mean, as people age, in maturity levels, there's a lot of things to take into account.
Yeah, I have different like levels. So it just depends on like my level of comfort. So like I'm introverted with some people, and then other people like they would never know that I was introverted once I'm comfortable in the situation. So it takes me like anytime I start a new job, it takes me like a year and a half, 2 years to get like super comfortable at that job. And it's not because like, then I can coast because I've done all the hard work. That's not it at all. It's mainly just because like the people around me, I get used to them. I'm actually, because I'm not as dialed into reading them 24/7 because I already know a bit about them. It makes it easier to where I'm not always overthinking every conversation that I have, which makes it a lot better. So like, people are always like, you're super introverted. And I'm like, yeah, I am until you get to know me. And then once you know me, like, you're going to wish you never said that because I am not that way.
Yeah, I get that. I tend to be on the introverted side of things for the most part. It's usually where I sit, kind of a lot more observant, quiet. Even in my leadership style, I prefer that. I prefer to, if I'm going to go and lead and help others, make it seem as though I'm doing nothing and they're doing all the work per se. Like anything I'm doing on the back end doesn't have to be noticed. It's more of empowering those around me, being on the introverted side and just providing that guidance that's necessary, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a really good trait of a leader as well. Like, I think that's another really good trait is empowering people to do their best and not wanting, like, I hate it when people call me out. Like when people praise me, I hate it because I'm like, just praise everybody else who did all the work. All I did was pull the strings to make it happen. Like I don't want the credit for it at all because to me it's not important. Like I'd rather just be in the background and I'm stealthy like that. I like being stealthy.
Yeah. So you can go the self-validation route, not need the external source, and those who are seeking that, hey, here you go.
Yeah.
You can have it. I don't really want it in the first place.
Yeah, because I hate the limelight. I'm not a limelight person.
Okay, good. I'm going to go the other way.
Like, I get red and embarrassed, and I'm like, oh, the limelight. But some people need the limelight to know that they're doing good work. I'm like, every now and then, yeah, I do need to be told that I'm doing good work to know that I'm doing good work because I can't always just self-validate because then what happens when you're wrong and you don't have enough self-reflection going on or enough honest self-reflection going on that like you think you're doing great work and then somebody comes along and they're like, this is terrible. This is just terrible. And you're like, well, you could have said something. And they're like, well, we didn't give you any kind of recognition for like 6 months. And you're like, well, I was just hoping that you understood that I didn't like the recognition. So like every now and then, yeah, you probably should just so that somebody knows that like, hey, it's important. They're doing great work. But I like to be in the background as well. I like to be in the shadows.
Yeah.
I make things happen. I don't take credit for the things that happen.
Resolute action. I see that.
But I will take accountability for things that happen that maybe shouldn't have happened, right? Like along the way. Like, so I will be the person that steps up and is like, okay, I get it. You're upset about yada, yada, yada. How can we fix it? Here's what we're trying to do to fix it. But I don't want like when it comes all the way around and it's fixed and you know, the client's super happy. I don't want to be told that I did great work. Like tell my team they did great work. Thanks.
I get that. I get it.
What about you, August? Are you you're much more of a out in front of everyone kind of person, or do you like to be in the shadows too?
I like recognition primarily because I have really bad imposter syndrome still. So I question a lot of the things that I do. So I like being told that I'm doing a good job. I don't need it because I know my results speak for themselves, but it is nice to hear.
I agree with that. Yeah, hearing it is good, but again, it's not needed. It's a nice one. It's nice to want that. It's nice to hear.
I don't mind hearing it. It's when I have to see it. It's when I have to see it. I don't want to see it. Like, you can tell me, like, hey, you're doing a good job. Cool, thanks. And there's other ways of making somebody feel valued and feel like they're doing great work. But imposter syndrome is something else that, like, we can also bring up in here, because a lot of people think that, like, when you're in leadership, you no longer are an imposter. You don't have that problem anymore. And I'm here to tell you that is a bold-faced lie. I still question things on a regular basis. And I'm like, somebody will ask me a question and I'll be like, I don't know the answer to this. Let me go do some research and figure it out for you. I got really good at being like, I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Let me go do some research and get back to you on that. Like, that is like my
favorite.
default.
That's my favorite thing to say in interviews is I don't know, but this is how I would find out. It has worked out so well for me.
Me too, apparently.
That is an ideal answer. Now I'm gonna figure it out.
Well, it's like
let me do some research.
It's showing them that you're not afraid to say that you don't know, because there's a lot of it's impossible to know everything in what we do. You can't. And anyone that says they know everything about cybersecurity is a liar. Like it's not possible. And instead of saying I don't know and then just falling on your face, if you say that, well, this is how I would find out, it shows analytical thinking or critical thinking, whatever you want to call it.
Or being able to think through a process.
Yeah.
You don't have to know every answer. Like, one of my favorite things when I used to interview for SOC and hire for SOC was I would interview newbies, some entry-level talent, and I would ask not questions that they wouldn't know. Like, I wouldn't ask anything that would, like, completely throw them off, but enough that if they went through a boot camp or they were studying for their Sec Plus, they would be able to answer relatively okay. And a lot of times when they would get stuck, I would say, just think through the process out loud. Like, think through your process and tell me what your process is. Because if you're on the right track and you're thinking through your process out loud, I can at least acknowledge, like, hey, you're on the right track. Maybe you didn't quite get there yet, or maybe you're spot on and I'm way off. Like, you know,
some people just don't interview well either. Like, some people just don't interview well, and there's not a lot that you can do about it because they're nervous. I mean, and there's not really a way to get around it besides blasting through interviews multiple times until you're comfortable enough in your own skin.
Yeah, when it comes to stuff like that you were talking about, it's more about, as with others, it's more about what they see. Right? I can tell them what to look at, but I would need help in knowing what they can actually see in that perspective to allow for help or guidance. Or they might even go and teach me something in that perspective.
Yeah.
They may see something I never do. I'm like, oh, damn, that's a great thing. How'd you see that? Like, well, show me, you know? So leaning into that can help too, and that can help others feel comfortable within their skin and even broaden my own horizons and seeing the kind of growth that can happen there.
And that is why having different cultures represented in companies is super important, because you bring in different perspectives when you have different cultures. And I know I've said this before and I've gone off on rants about it, but different cultures is very important, because I'm going to see something different than how you see it. And you're going to see something completely different than how August sees it. But it doesn't mean that any of us are wrong. It just means that we were only seeing it from one side beforehand. And now when we all come together, we can see it a much bigger picture and a much more collective picture.
Exactly.
So we are coming up on time. I know that August, you do have to get a move in on time. So final thoughts. We're going to wrap it on up. What are your final thoughts, Ellie?
Final thoughts. I suppose it's just like the key features of leaders. Really, we hit on. It's going to be that resiliency, the adaptability, the flexibility, the humility and accountability that we can take, and the amount of truth that we can actually sit with and look at will dictate our capacity to be a good leader, I suppose, or quote unquote good leader, because the situation dictates that too.
Yeah. What about you, August? What is your nugget of knowledge?
My nugget of knowledge is going to be taking away differences in deliverance of feedback, because that's probably something that I have never really considered, and I will be taking that forward to soften my loud voice when I deliver feedback to those appointed underneath me.
My nugget of knowledge for the day is going to be that resiliency, and I love that one. That was a great trait, a great quality. And, pivot. Just when you feel like you're failing, if you pivot, you might not fail.
Exactly.
As long as you fail forward,
keep
it's
moving.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. Fail forward. Fail fast, fail hard. That is actually one of our core values. So, well, it has been a great episode. I'm really actually like the way we did this better this time because we didn't have notes to go off of, and it was a much more natural conversation.
Yeah, I like the flow.
So, we appreciate
agree.
you hopping on with us, Ellie.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I agree.
And thanks to everyone out in our comments. Mainly, it looks like Wayne Parrish was out there. So thank you for hopping in and getting on live with us. Hope to see you all back in a couple of weeks with the Cyber Warrior. Derek Scheller is going to be on next. So
That'll be fun.
yeah, it should be. It should be a good time.
Derek is a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm really excited for that episode. So hopefully we will see you all in 2 weeks and we will not all be traveling anymore. Have a good night, everyone. And we will talk to you later.